गोपी जनवल्लभ गिरिवरधारी गोपी जनवल्लभ यमुना तीरा वनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर सुत श्री श्रीमद अभयचरणारविंद भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शत श्री श्रीमद शिल भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती ठाकुर गोस्वामी प्रभुपाद की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Nama Om Visnu-Upādāya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vikasa Swāminiti Namane. Nama Om Visnu-Upādāya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swāminiti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देश तारिणे। ओम अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणरघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। So today is the disappearance day of Sri Murari Gupta. Sri Murari Gupta Prabhu is a very intimate and special associate of Lord Chaitanya. He's Lord Chaitanya's classmate. He knew Chaitanya Mahaprabhu from his childhood friend of actually Nimai. And Sri Murari Gupta is said to be, according to the Gaura Ganodesha Deepika, is said to be Hanuman in Ramachandra Leela. And also, he was, Murari Gupta was Hanuman in Ramachandra's Leela. And then Chaitanya Bhagavat says, Murari Gupta is a physician for the disease of material life. He was among the many associates of Mahaprabhu who appeared in Shillett. So Shillett is currently in Bangladesh. But Murari's family moved from Shillett to Navadvip. They lived in the same neighborhood as Sri Chaitanya. So Murari was Nimai's companion in many of his childhood pastimes. The Chaitanya Charitamrita confirms that he observed Mahaprabhu's childhood pastimes. So because the Chaitanya Bhagavat primarily deals with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's childhood pastimes, and Chaitanya Bhagavat, what is the difference between Chaitanya Bhagavat and Chaitanya Charitamrita? The Chaitanya Bhagavat deals with Sri Gaura Narayana, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as the Supreme Lord incarnated in this age of Kali to spread Sankirtan. The Chaitanya Charitamrita, on the other hand, focuses on Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's internal reason of appearance, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has appeared to relish the nectarian love that Srimati Radharani experiences for Krishna. That Krishna himself appeared for this reason. This is a fundamental difference between Chaitanya Bhagavat and Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's not that Chaitanya Charitamrita doesn't speak of the Supreme Lord, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu being the Supreme Lord. It does say that quite often. However, Chaitanya Charitamrita reveals that internal mood of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu versus the Chaitanya Bhagavat, which focuses more on Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Navadvip pastimes. And therefore, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he had one of his first books that he recommended people to read back in the day was Chaitanya Bhagavat, because Chaitanya Bhagavat helps root out Sahajiya Bhav, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is not taken as some sentimentalist, but rather the incarnation of the Supreme Lord, Krishna himself. He is Gaura Narayana. And so, there's some few pastimes here. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed special mercy to Murari. So, when Mahaprabhu returned from Gaya, he saw Murari at the house of Shuklambar Brahmachari. Murari had heard of Mahaprabhu's transformations from Sriman Pandit. Mahaprabhu was pleased with Murari, and one day he gave him a vision of his form as the Varaha avatar. The Lord lifted Murari's water jug on his nose as he gave a loud roar. Murari considered his life to have been fulfilled by his vision, and he composed a hymn in glorification of the Lord. This event has been beautifully described by Vrindavan Das Thakur in the Chaitanya Bhagavat Madhya Khanda, chapter 3. So, here Chaitanya Mahaprabhu manifests his form as Varaha in the courtyard of Murari Gupta's house. So, wonderful pastime there. And then, during his 21 hours, so during the Mahaprakash Leela, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu reveals his exalted nature as the Supreme Lord in the Mahaprakash Leela, and he reciprocates with all the devotees at Srivas Angan. The Lord gave Murari a vision of himself as Rama, because Murari is Hanuman and his worshipable Lord is Lord Ramachandra, that the Lord gave him vision as Rama. So this is why Chaitanya Bhagavat reveals all of these things in great detail. When Murari saw his worshipable deity before him, he fainted away. He then glorified the Lord in a way that so much pleased him that he gave Murari a benediction to have all his desires fulfilled. From Chaitanya Bhagavat, Madhya Khanda, chapter 10, text 7 to 11, Mahaprabhu ordered Murari, "Behold my form." And lo, Murari saw the form of Raghunath directly in front of him. He saw the Lord of the universe with the swarthy color of darba grass, because Lord Ramachandra is actually green. He appears green, although in some places he says is blackish blue. Sitting in the virasana, the posture of a great bowman, He saw Sita and Lakshman standing on either side of him, and his army of monkeys surrounding him, singing hymns of praise. It seemed to Murari that he himself was one of the monkeys, and as soon as he saw this, he fainted. The best of the physicians, Murari, lay unconscious on the ground, completely under Mahaprabhu's spell. On one occasion, when Mahaprabhu heard Murari Gupta recite the glories of Ramachandra, he wrote Ramadas, servant of Rama, on his forehead. This is stated in Chaitanya Charitamrita. On another occasion, Mahaprabhu displayed a four-armed Narayan form in the house of Srivas and began calling the name of Garuda. Murari Gupta heard the call and, giving a loud roar, took the form of the king of birds. Mahaprabhu then climbed on his shoulders. This Leela is described both in the 20th chapter of the Madhya Kanda of Chaitanya Bhagavat and the 12th wave of Bhakti Ratnakar. One day, Murari Gupta came to the house of Srivas. Upon arriving, he first paid obeisances to Mahaprabhu and then to Nityananda, but Mahaprabhu told him that he had not followed the proper procedure. Murari could not understand what he meant. That night, when he returned home, he had a dream in which he saw Nityananda as Balaram fanning Mahaprabhu, Krishna, with a fly whisk. Murari then understood what Mahaprabhu had been telling him, and from then onwards he paid obeisances first to Nityananda and afterwards to Mahaprabhu. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur comments in his Gaudiya Bhashya, Sri Murari was a worshipper of Balaram. Therefore, to worship the Supreme Lord without worshipping the Guru and Jagat Guru was an error of protocol. Therefore, even in deity worship and all of this, we have to first worship the Guru. If there is deficiency in worshipping the Guru, then our worship of Krishna will not achieve perfection. And then the Lord gives Murari his pan, beetle pan. Mahaprabhu had great affection for Murari Gupta and would sometimes give him his own pan, which Murari would eat with relish. When Mahaprabhu told Murari to wash his hands, Murari would simply wipe his hands on his head. It was at this time that Mahaprabhu suddenly began to criticize the false views of the Smartha Brahmanas and Prakashananda's Mayavad philosophy. The Lord said, "O foolish one, you have lost your caste status. My remnants are all over your body." So, from this we can understand, this is Murari Gupta doing this is appropriate because the Supreme Lord's remnants are prasad. It's pure. Applying that upon oneself, one will achieve Krishna prema. But at the same time, we can understand that the Brahmins, they wouldn't do that, because if you eat and then you touch everywhere in your body, it's sometimes devotees don't realize that. They eat with both hands, and then when then in the middle of them eating, they clasp their hands together, and then they rub it on their legs and this and that. Even when you use a spoon, your hand is muchi. It doesn't mean you can touch anywhere and everywhere and touch so many things and like this and like this and like this, and it says that, "Oh foolish one, you've lost your caste status." So it's considered contaminated and mode of ignorance. So anyways, the Lord here is criticizing the Smartha Brahmanas because they don't understand that the Supreme Lord's prasadam is fully transcendental. As he spoke, the Lord went into a trance in which he took his identity as the Supreme Person. He ground his teeth and started to say something special. "There is a sannyasi named Prakashananda in Kashi who's cutting me into little bits. He teaches the Vedanta but does not accept my form. I have caused him to become leprous, but still he does not understand. The fool does not realize that my unlimited universes are contained within my body. What arrogance that he should deny it. I tell you the truth, Murari, for you are my servant. Anyone who does not accept my form is bound for ruin." Then the Lord Murari cures the Lord's indigestion. The Lord was very happy to accept a devotee's offering no matter how it's made. When Murari returned home, he told his wife that he wished to eat. His devoted wife carefully prepared rice with ghee and gave it to her husband. But Murari, absorbed in contemplation on Krishna, took handful after handful of the food and threw it on the ground, offering it to the Lord in this way. This amazing thing is that even though Mahaprabhu was not physically present there at that time, he accepted the offering. The next day, he came to Murari's house and said to him, "I have come to you for medicine. Yesterday you kept insisting that I eat. You made me eat so much now that I have indigestion. You must give me some water, for that will be the remedy for my stomach problem." Mahaprabhu took water from a jug in Murari's house, drinking down its entire contents. Seeing this, Murari fainted, and all the devotees began to cry. Murari's fear of the Lord's departure. Murari Gupta analyzed the pastimes of many incarnations of the Lord and came to the conclusion that in each one of the Lord's appearances, he always arranged for his associates to leave the world before he did. Thus, Ramachandra destroyed Ravana to save Sita, but then abandoned her. Lord Krishna arranged for the destruction of the Yadus. Murari thus thought that since Mahaprabhu would inevitably be disappearing at a certain moment, it would be better for him to depart before that day arrived, for it would be far too painful for him to witness such an event. For this reason, Murari purchased a sharp knife and kept it hidden in his home. The Lord knew of his intention and immediately came to his house and asked Murari to hand over the knife. Both the above mentioned Leelas are found described in Bhakti Ratnakar's 12th wave. Murari Gupta would also go on annual pilgrimage with the other devotees to see Mahaprabhu in Puri. Accompanied by his wife, he would feed Mahaprabhu with many preparations they had prepared themselves. Murari would participate in the Ratha Yatra festival as a member of the third Sankirtan group in which Mukunda Datta sang and Haridas Thakur danced. Srila Murari Gupta Prabhu ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 14. Text 18. Sarvāśramān upādāya svāśrameṇa kalatravān vyasana-arṇavam atyeti jala-yānaiḥ yathā-arṇavam sarvāśramān upādāya svāśrameṇa kalatravān vyasanārṇavam atyeti jala-yānair yathārṇavam sarvāśramān upādāya svāśrameṇa kalatravān vyasanārṇavam atyeti jala-yānair yathārṇavam sarvāśramān upādāya svāśrameṇa kalatravān vyasanārṇavam atyeti jala-yānair yathārṇavam. Please repeat. Sarvāśramān upādāya svāśrameṇa kalatravān
vyasanārṇavam atyeti jala-yānair yathārṇavam
sarvāśramān upādāya svāśrameṇa kalatravān vyasanārṇavam atyeti jala-yānair yathārṇavam sarvāśramān upādāya svāśrameṇa kalatravān
vyasanārṇavam atyeti jala-yānair yathārṇavam
sarvāśramān upādāya
svāśramān
svāśrameṇa
kalatravān
vyasanārṇavam atyeti
jala-yānair
jala-yānair
yathārṇavam sarvāśramān svāśrameṇa kalatravān vyasanārṇavam atyeti jala-yānair yathārṇavam. Mataji. sarvāśramān svāśrameṇa kalatravān vyasanārṇavam atyeti jala-yānair yathārṇavam. Sarva, all, āśramān, social orders, upādāya, completing, own, āśrameṇa, by the social orders, kalatra-vān, a person living with a wife, vyasana-arṇavam, the dangerous ocean of material existence, atyeti, one can cross over, jala-yānaiḥ, with seagoing vessels, yathā, as, āśramanam, the ocean. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. As one can cross over the ocean with sea-going vessels, one can cross the dangerous situation of the material ocean by living with a wife. There are four social orders for cooperation in the endeavor for liberation from material existence. The orders of brahmacarya, or pious student life, household life with a wife, retired life, and renounced life all depend for successful advancement on the householder who lives with a wife. This cooperation is essential for the proper functioning of the institution of the four social orders and the four spiritual orders of life. This Vedic varṇāśrama system is generally known as the caste system. The man who lives with a wife has a great responsibility in maintaining the members of the other social orders, the brahmacārīs, vanaprasthas, and sannyāsīs. Except for the grihasthas or the householders, everyone is supposed to engage in the spiritual advancement of life. Therefore, the brahmachari, the vanaprastha, and the sannyasi have very little time to earn a livelihood. They therefore collect alms from the grihasthas, and thus they secure the bare necessities of life and cultivate spiritual understanding. By helping the other three sections of society cultivate spiritual values, the householder also makes advancement in spiritual life. Ultimately, every member of society automatically becomes spiritually advanced and easily crosses the ocean of nescience. Oh, well, I already chanted my prayers. Hare Krishna. So, here, Kashyapa is speaking to Diti. Diti has approached him for sex at an inappropriate time, and he is trying to convince her otherwise. So, the Srimad Bhagavatam puts these things in here in order for our instruction. It's sometimes, you wonder, why are these kind of statements said? Because they're important to us. So, how is this statement important? This statement can be understood in multiple ways. The first way is to understand that Kashyapa is speaking the truth. He's not just flattering his wife. There is some truth in his statement. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada substantiates that in what he's saying. But the other way to look at it is that Kashyapa, in one sense, is talking a bit too much. I was just going to touch upon that before getting to Prabhupada. Kashyapa is talking too much. You don't have to say all of these things. You just have to tell her that this is not the time to do it. But um, what happens is when you're in a weakened state, then you hope to gain the mercy of the other person. And so you flatter them. It's not a position of strength. It's a position of weakness. That you're hoping that by flattering them, they'll be merciful on you and agree to your proposal. But such is not supposed to be done by somebody who is responsible. That he's responsible, that means that when required, he needs to be able to set the standard. He needs to be able to put his foot down and say, this is what it is. And therefore, those who carry responsibility need to have the ability and also the maturity to be able to sometimes take some decisions that might not be popular, but should be done because that's what needs to get done. Kashyapa was in a weakened situation, and he is, and one who's responsible can only really be responsible if there is a certain level of detachment. Kashyapa was more attached to Diti than he should have been, and therefore he couldn't execute dharma properly. He's trying, but it's a weak attempt. It depends on her more than him. Actually, it should depend more on him than her. He is supposed to guide her, but he is praying that she would have reasoning, not very intelligent. So that's one side of the perspective on this verse. Okay, going to the verse itself. There is the brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha and sannyas ashrams, and the three, brahmachari, vanaprastha and sannyas, are said to be dedicated for spiritual life. And the main characteristic of them being dedicated to spiritual life is that the number one qualification is that they don't engage in sex, that they are celibate. This is the nature of the brahmachari, vanaprastha and sannyas ashrams. Celibacy is mandatory there to make spiritual advancement. Otherwise, it's impossible. You will not make any spiritual advancement. And why? Why is that so? Why does, because some people wonder, why are you all against sex so much? Because Bhagavatam states, famous verse in Bhagavatam, Pumsastriya mithuni bhavametam tayor mitho hrite ganti mahuhu atho griha kshetra sutapta vittair janasya mohoyam aham mameti. That the attraction between male and female is the basic principle of material existence. On the basis of this misconception, which ties together the hearts of the male and female, one becomes attracted to his body, home, property, children, relatives, and wealth. In this way, one increases life's illusion and thinks in terms of I and mine. That the sex factor, it creates the main bodily identification in the conditioned state of existence. And therefore, one who is seriously trying to be spiritual has to go directly against that. And therefore, there are three ashrams meant for that particular purpose. And that means that 3/4 of the orders of the spiritual orders are dedicated to spiritual activity, because human form of life is meant to cultivate spiritual realization. And if that doesn't happen, then human society degrades to animalism, as we see today. You can see that religions that do not emphasize renunciation, they just turn into sense gratifiers. And people, eventually, it just degrades to a form of animal life. It's one slippery slope after another. People keep debating, and the end, there's no end to these kind of debates as to what is okay and what is not okay, because the basic principle of renunciation is not there. There is not. If your religion tells you that the purpose of life is to enjoy, then you get religions that facilitate divorce very easily. And what do the men become? Nothing. Just exploitative, just like dogs. running around here and there, no responsibility. And you don't get, and you will see one thing also characteristic in that society is you won't see very, very philosophical thinking. You won't find very exalted, like literature that are very, they're very, what do you call that, profound in nature. You won't find it. There's not much contemplation. I mean, and you see that with the, especially the Abrahamic religions, because they, to a large extent, this is what has become of them. There are some sects of Abrahamic religion that had or have some kind of conception of renunciation. And in those forms of, even in those little sects, you will find that architecture is better of the places of worship. They're better. They have more of a social order, so as to say. And you'll also see that there are some pretty noble personalities that you will find in that kind of tradition. But when that's not there, what do you find? You don't find anything. People, I mean, again, how much do if you don't understand reincarnation, that just shows the level of philosophical understanding that one has. It is impossible to make sense of a just God without the concept of reincarnation. So, Vedic society is dedicated to making sure that you have 3 ashrams solely engaged in spiritual advancement. Okay, now how is the Grihastha ashram maintaining these 3 ashrams? We have one example right there in the Purport, but there are other examples also. What's the example that Prabhupada gave in the Purport that we just read? Yes, that the Grihastha ashram monetarily supports the other ashrams. That the Grihasthas are meant to give in charity for the other ashrams, they're meant to support. And why is that important? Because the Grihastha cannot execute dharma without doing this. This is how it's tied. And because the other 3 ashrams are engaged in spiritual advancement, when the Grihasthas invite them, then they hear some spiritual instruction. And the people and the other 3 ashrams are not supposed to collect charity from the Grihasthas without giving spiritual instruction, or at least setting a good example. The minimum you can do is to set a good example, is to live a pure, unadulterated life. That is instruction also. That's the bare minimum. And so, what else? In what other ways did the Grihastha ashram support the other 3 ashrams? By providing children. How is children beneficial for the other 3 ashrams? Huh? Sorry? They grow up and enter into the other ashrams. Yeah, so the brahmacārīs won't exist if they don't produce children. And if you don't produce children, then you're not going to have the vanaprasthas or sannyāsīs or grihasthas either. So children, and okay, a little more depth. Let's see if you can analyze this a little more deeply. How else are they supporting? How else are the grihasthas supporting the 3 ashrams? Other 3 ashrams.
Training the children in spiritual life?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of, yeah, okay, sure, fine. Training, but that's kind of tying in line with the fact that they produce children. That means they're supposed to train them too. What else? Providing shelter, not just for the women. They provide shelter for the children. They provide shelter for the women. They also provide shelter for the elderly. This is very important, that the grihasthas protect those who need protection in society, so that the others can focus on spiritual advancement. And because the grihasthas take such a burden, when they take on such a burden, they are given a little license for sense gratification, because they're facilitating the others. So, and it helps them, because otherwise the grihastha's nature to expand their sense enjoyment would cause entanglement for them. But if they expand with the desire to protect women, children, and elderly, and the other three ashrams, then they live a sinless life. At the minimum, they live a sinless life. Actually, it's a very pious life. Now, how are they protecting the women? By protecting the women, the others can remain celibate. This is a very important principle, that grihasthas are supposed to protect women. Well, how do they protect women? They satisfy the women, they protect them. They keep them happy, they keep them satisfied by giving them, women need satisfaction. One of the ways in which a woman is satisfied is by giving her children. And by giving her the necessity, she needs a comfortable place to live. Okay. So then you see how when a man who's a grihastha, when he takes up the role of protection, then because the woman needs a house, because the children need a house, therefore he can have a house. And therefore it doesn't become sinful. It becomes a noble act if it's done in the right consciousness and with the proper sense of duty. So, this is a very, very important point to understand, that this protection, and this is what Arjuna was freaking out in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, that if all the men are killed, who's going to protect the women and children? And then what happens? You have unwanted progeny, because the other three orders are going to get ruined. Because all the men who are grihasthas are being killed right now on the battlefield, and they cannot protect their wife and children. And when the wife are unprotected, the customs are destroyed, the women become adulterated, the family customs are destroyed, and ultimately what does he say? All social welfare activities are completely destroyed. What does that mean? When social welfare activities are destroyed, what happens to society? Animal society, which means? Okay, yes, godless, yes. Yes, no renunciation. What else? There is an increase of what? Varṇā-shankara, yes. And? Huh? That we already said, godlessness. Suffering. Everybody is just suffering. That's all. And what happens because of this suffering? Prosperity is lost. Prosperity is lost. There's no real prosperity. People think that this iPhone is not prosperity. It's plastic. This is not prosperous. You don't have, people think that having tin cars and having oil and this is prosperity. This is not prosperity. It's illusion. Prabhupada says, what is this? Is it just because you build a thin skyscraper full of concrete and bricks, this is advancement? So you are now more advanced? So what kind of stupid understanding is this? How is this advancement? But that's what people think is advancement. You build a big glass building with a glass facade and it's advancement. But, I mean, we can see now also that people are somewhat disillusioned by this now. There's a good number of people who are disillusioned. They don't want to see these big glass buildings. They don't like them. Because the truth is, it's not very hard to understand that these are artificial places of residence that are practically just hell. It's just hell. To maintain that is hell. The amount of trash all these cities generate, it's incredible. So artificial. So this is not prosperity. People lose their brain. So, therefore, it's so important for grihasthas to be dutiful, to stay married, and to provide for their dependents. And because actually it is the fundamental, you can say, bedrock of any society, is that the grihastha. You can see that here. It says that, and actually the Sanskrit is very interesting. Sarvāśramā upādāya. That upādāya means completing that sarva-śramān, that the grihastha ashram completes the other social orders. The other social orders are incomplete without the grihastha ashram being complete. It's very significant to note. And sarvāśramēṇa kalatravān. Basically it says that svāśrameṇa kalatravān, that a grihastha, by properly executing the duties of the grihastha ashram, completes the other three orders. It's very interesting. A brahmacārī executing brahmacārya doesn't necessarily complete the grihastha ashrama's duties. Neither does a sannyāsī. But a grihastha, when he completely and perfectly performs his duty, he completes the other ashrams. Why? Because from him comes the other three ashrams. So in this sense, it is proper to understand how the grihastha ashram, when properly executed, is actually extremely glorious and pleasing to Krishna. It is an important fact to understand. It is a philosophical truth. And brahmacārīs or sannyāsīs, renunciants in general, who become overly averse to the grihastha ashram, will be incomplete. Why? Because that which completes your ashram, you are not recognizing that. How will you be complete? If we don't respect, as renunciants, we don't respect the grihasthas who are protecting us by being grihasthas, proper grihasthas, then your ashram is incomplete. And if you are incomplete, that means you are not going to be satisfied. Your mind will be disturbed. And if your mind is disturbed, you cannot advance in spiritual life. If you don't advance in spiritual life, you're not happy. And if you're not happy, you will seek happiness. But because you're not getting happiness from the spiritual side, where will you seek happiness? On the material side. And that leads to suffering, fall down. Fall down. It's very important to understand this. Srila Prabhupada gives, this is a great letter, it's a long letter, but it's very, very relevant in this regard. This is January 4, 1973. Srila Prabhupada writes to his disciple Madhukar. This is the maximum size I can blow it up. So, my dear Madhukar, I beg to acknowledge receipt of your letter dated December 22, 1972, and I've noted the contents with care. For these questions arising between married husband and wife, you are requesting me to leave your wife and take the Vanaprastha order of life. For these questions, you must consult with and take permission from presidents and GBC. So first he says that you should consult GBC and presidents. But then Srila Prabhupada goes on to instruct him. He doesn't just leave it there. Yes, I know your wife Leela Shakti. And I know that she is a very serious and advanced disciple. But now you are married to her, there is some obligation according to Krishna consciousness or Vedic system. These things cannot be taken so lightly. Otherwise, the whole thing will become a farce. Simply get married without considering what is the serious nature of married life. Then, if there is little disturbance, or if I do not like my wife or husband, let me go away. Everyone else is doing like that. So, in this way, the whole thing is becoming a farce. You say that your association together was hindering your advancement. But Krishna conscious marriage system should not be taken in that way. That if there is any botheration, that means something is hindering my spiritual progress. No. Once it is adopted, the grihastha life, even it may be troublesome at times, it must be fulfilled as my occupational duty. Of course, it is better to remain unmarried celibate. But if so many women are coming, we cannot reject them. If someone comes to Krishna, it is our duty to give them protection. Krishna has informed us in Bhagavad Gita that even women and Shudras and other inferior class of men can take refuge in him. So the problem is there. The woman must have a husband to give protection. Of course, if the woman can remain unmarried and if there is suitable arrangement for the temple to protect them, just like in the Christian church, there is a nunnery for systematic program of engaging the ladies and protecting them, that is also nice. But if there is sex desire, how to control it? So this is the point, that you don't have sex, you're able to control sex desire, you're able to stay unmarried, men and women, fine, great. You can stay, you can take protection of the temple. I mean, it's Here, the point is that this is specifically related to the West, that women are coming from a situation without protection. And the temple, Prabhupada has created the brahmacharini ashram to offer protection. One can stay like that and be satisfied. And same thing with the men. There's the brahmacharya ashram. Control your sex desire, stay satisfied, stay happy. But if you're not able to control sex desire, then what to do? Women are normally very lusty, more lusty than men, and they are weaker sex. It is difficult for them to make spiritual advancement without the help of husband. For so many reasons, our women must have a husband. That is all right. But if once they have got a husband, he goes away so quickly, that will not be very much happy for them. Now, I do not know the situation in your particular case. I am simply giving you the general policy or background understanding. We should never think of our so-called advancement as being conditioned or dependent upon some set of material circumstances, such as marriage, vanaprastha, or this or that. Mature understanding of Krishna consciousness means that whatever condition of life I am in at present, that is Krishna's special mercy upon me. Therefore, let me take advantage in the best way possible to spread this Krishna consciousness movement and conduct my spiritual master's mission. If I consider my own spiritual progress or happiness or any other thing personal, that is material consideration, if there was unhappy adjustment for becoming married, why you got married at all? That means you have to consider what are the duties that one has to perform before one gets married. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't have lusty desires and not be willing to take a serious responsibility to set a proper example and maintain the other ashrams of society. It is not possible. And so then Prabhupada says, they're unhappy. Now you're saying, oh no, this marriage life is not conducive for my spiritual advancement. That's the standard excuse that you hear. It's very standard. And really, for somebody who's in the middle of that, it sounds like they've got the best spiritual reason and it's absolutely in line with Shastra and Siddhanta, but everybody around them knows it's complete nonsense. Whatever is done. That is a fact. But I'm only pointing out that once before you did something without proper study of your real responsibility, and now you are contemplating again some drastic action in a similar manner. Note this, how Srila Prabhupada is making this point. That previously you didn't consider responsibility, you just got yourself married because of whatever infatuation or something, you didn't understand what you were getting into, and you got yourself married, and now with the same attitude you're thinking of dropping out of it. It is like a monkey jumping from tree to tree. There is no difference. So, therefore, consider it carefully in this light. There is one verse from Bhagavad Gita. Yasma no dvijate loko, loka no dvijate chayaha. Harsha marsha bhayodvegair mukto yasya chame priyaha. He for whom no one is put into difficulty and who is not disturbed by anxiety, who is steady in happiness and distress, is very dear to me. This is very interesting that Srila Prabhupada is quoting this in this regard. You would never think of it in that way. You would sort of think that this is probably some sadhu, sannyasi, very renounced person, and he's like the Goswamis and not giving. Prabhupada is saying this for a married person, that you don't put your wife into difficulty, and you don't get disturbed by anxiety, and you are steady in your occupational duty. It doesn't mean that we have no emotions. But we have to be steady. The vice versa goes true for the wife also. It goes both ways. They both have to understand the duty that they have to perform. And such a person is dear. It's not that you don't experience some pain, you don't experience something like that, but you can't waver from your duty, understanding the responsibility that's there. It's not possible. You can't give up responsibility. One who gives up responsibility is no better than an animal. And such an animal cannot be saved by the spiritual master. It's very difficult. Once we have been saved, we were animals, we've been given diksha, now we are twice born, we're actually born as human beings now. But if we degrade back to the animal platform, then where is the protection? The Prabhupada says, one mistake of judgment often made by the neophyte devotees is that at any time there is some disturbance or some difficulty, they are considering that the conditions or the external circumstances under which the difficulty took place are the cause of the difficulty itself. But rather the cause is the material world. There's always going to be difficulty in this material world. That doesn't mean that one gives up one's occupational duty. Prabhupada says that is not a fact. In this material world, there is always some difficulty, no matter in this situation or that situation. Therefore, simply by changing my status of occupation or my status of life, that will not help anything. Because the real fact is that if there is any difficulty with others, that is my lack of Krishna consciousness, not theirs. Is this clear? Krishna says that his dearest devotee is one who does not put others into difficulty. In fact, who puts no one other into difficulty. So try to judge the matter on these points. Whether you or not, you are putting either your wife or yourself into some difficulty. You don't put yourself also into some difficulty. Isn't that amazing? That verse refers not just putting others, don't put yourself also into unnecessary difficulty. Don't be stupid and then go and jump from the pan into the fire. You want to escape the pan, you jump straight into the fire. In the pan, it takes a little more time to get burned. In the fire, you're burned instantly. The right understanding of Bhagavad Gita is Arjuna's understanding. In other words, Arjuna came to the conclusion that he must perform his occupational duty not as a material obligation for reasons of wife, family, friends, reputation, professional integrity like that. No. Rather, he must conduct the functions of his station of life only as a devotional service performed for Krishna. That the occupational duty and maintaining the other ashram is not performed out of pride. It's not performed out of attachment to the wife or children. It's actually performed as an attachment to the spiritual master's mission, to set a right example and for the pleasure of Krishna. That means that devotional service is what is important, not my occupational duty. But it does not mean that occupational duty is not the real consideration, that I should give it up and do something else, thinking that devotional service may be carried on under whatever circumstances which I may whimsically decide. Oh, I can chant anywhere. Prabhuji, the point is I have vowed to chant the 16 rounds. I can chant that at any time and divorce my wife. No. It doesn't work that way. So Prabhupada is making this point. It's not that we think that because it says, right, devotional service, you can perform in any circumstances. There's no restriction between time, place. There's no restriction between time, place, circumstance. Nice. No. This is sinful. This is sinful. Krishna recommended Arjuna to remain as he was, not to disrupt the order of society and go against his own nature just for convenience sake. Our occupational duty is not arbitrary. That means that once we have taken up some field of action, if we are advanced in our understanding, then we shall not change it for another. Rather, our devotion is the important factor. So what does it matter? What I am doing so long, my work and energy are completely devoted to Krishna? Just like Krishna, He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He has no work, neither he has anything to do. Still he comes here to teach us this lesson. He accepts not only his occupational duty as cowherd boy or royal prince, but he also accepts married life. He enters politics. He is a philosopher. He is even chariot driver during a great battle. He does not give example of himself avoiding his occupational duty. So if Krishna himself is exhibiting by his own conduct what is the perfection of existence, then we should heed such an example if we are intelligent. Even supposing there is wife at home with children, that does not matter. That is no hindrance to our spiritual life. This is a very advanced understanding. Such a person is actually better than a sannyasi, because a sannyasi can be very external. But a grahastha who's advanced, he's not external. Actually, he has very internal advancement. He has great internal. He may be surrounded by wife and children. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is some of the best examples. One of the best examples. So, and Krishna also says that. Is a sannyasi is not someone who does not light a fire like this. No. But sannyasi is one who executes his duties without expectation for results. And does it for the sake of the duty itself, which Prabhupada ties that when one understands one's duty is to please the spiritual master, then that which is supposed to be Nishkama Karma Yoga is not Nishkama Karma Yoga anymore, because the duty factor is not karma, but the duty is bhakti. But because executing one's occupational duty and maintaining social order is pleasing to Krishna. Why is it pleasing to Krishna? Because it facilitates making more devotees for Krishna. If everybody is sinful, like we see in today's society, it's hard to make devotees. But if society is pious and there's social order, more devotees can be made. That means more servants for Krishna, means more devotional service for Krishna, more pleasure for Krishna. This is the proper understanding. once we have accepted these things, occupational duties, we should not lightly give them up. That is the point. Of course, our occupational duty is as preachers of Krishna consciousness. So we must stick to that business under all circumstances. That is the main thing. Therefore, married, unmarried, divorced, whatever condition of life, my preaching mission does not depend on these things. The varṇāśrama system, dharma system, is scientifically arranged by Krishna to provide facility for delivering the fallen souls back home, back to Godhead. And if we make a mockery of this system by whimsically disrupting the order, that we must consider. That will not be a very good example. If so many young boys and girls so casually become married and then go away from each other, and the wife is a little unhappy, the husband is neglecting her in so many ways, like that. So the husband also, you cannot neglect. You have to provide the emotional support. It's physical, emotional, spiritual. All this support needs to be given, because offering protection doesn't just mean, okay, I married you, now here's a house and just go and stare at the wall. No. There has to be that support that needs to be offered. It's part of the duty. You have children, you have to support them. And there has to be recognition by a proper man who has some proper intelligence in understanding that women and children are more emotional than men, and therefore they need some emotional support. And that is the duty. You're not willing to do that duty, stay celibate. Can't stay celibate, take that up. Don't live sinful life like animals. Animal doesn't feel any need to give any emotional support. The monkey goes has sex left, right and center, and then goes and slaps around everyone and everything, and lives like that. But what is its consciousness? Mode of ignorance, degraded. So we cannot live like monkeys. So, if we set this example, then how the thing will go on properly? Householder life means wife, children, home. These things are to be understood by everyone. Why our devotees have taken it as something different? Why you take it? Household life means these things are there. Oh, no, I can't do this, I can't do that. Why? What do you mean? This is householder life. They have simply have some sex desire, get themselves married, and when the matter does not fulfill their expectations, immediately there is separation. These things are just like material activities, prostitution. The wife is left without a husband, and sometimes there is a child to be raised. In so many ways, the proposition is that the proposition that you and some others also are making becomes distasteful. We cannot expect that our temples will be places of shelter for so many widows and rejected wives. That will be a great burden, and we shall become a laughing stock in society. So that was a common thing back. I'll let the temple take care of it. I'll divorce my wife. Let the temple take care of my wife and children, and I'll become sannyasi. Nonsense. This was going on back in the day. And there will be unwanted progeny also. Why? Because the woman is dissatisfied. She needs emotional support. She finds someone, and then there is illicit sex going on. All these things are happening. So, and being the weaker sex, women require, and there will be illicit sex life that we are seeing also. And being the weaker sex, women are required to have a husband who is strong in Krishna consciousness, so that they may take advantage and make progress by sticking tightly to his feet. If their husband goes away from them, what will they do? So many instances are already there in our society. So many frustrated girls and boys. So I've introduced this marriage system in your Western countries because there is custom of freely intermingling male and female. Therefore, marriage is required to engage the boys and girls in devotional service. Never mind distinction of living status. But our marriage system is a little different than in your country. We do not sanction the policy of quick divorce. We are supposed to take husband and wife as eternal companion or assistant in Krishna conscious service. And there is promise never to separate. Of course, if there is any instance of very advanced disciples, married couple, and they have agreed that this husband shall now take sannyas or renounced order of life, being mutually very happy by that arrangement, then there is ground for such separation. But even in those cases, there is no question of separation. The husband, even he is sannyas, must be certain his wife will be taken care of nicely and protected in his absence. See how amazing society is, that once you've accepted, you have to. It's your duty. Must happen. Now, so many cases are there of unhappiness by the wife who has been abandoned by her husband against her wishes. So how can I sanction such a thing? I want to avoid setting a bad example for future generations. Therefore, I am so much cautiously considering your request. But if it becomes so easy for me to get married and then leave my wife under the excuse of married life being an impediment to my own spiritual progress, that will not be very good at all. That is misunderstanding of what is advancement in spiritual life. Occupational duty must be there, either this one or that one. But once I am engaged in something occupational duty, then I should not change that or give it up. That is the worst mistake. Devotional service is not bound up by such designations. Therefore, once I have chosen, it is better to stick in that way and develop my devotional attitude into full-blown love of Godhead. That is Arjuna's understanding. Hoping this meets you in good health, your ever well-wisher, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. To Madhukar Das, Adhikari, ISKCON, St. Louis. I'll end with a quote from the Ramayana. This is in the first canto. In describing Lord Rama's kingdom, Narada says to Valmiki, when he was maintaining the earth, the four-legged bull of Dharma, possessing the two horns of Artha and Kama and carrying the load of Moksha, factually prospered. Commentary by Vidwan Gauranga Prabhu. This is a fine explanation of the relationships between the four Purusharthas, Dharma, Artha, Kama and Moksha. As pointed out in the commentary of Sri Govindaraj in Ramayana, Sri Valmiki demotes Artha and Kama while promoting Dharma and Moksha. Here also the bull of Dharma is considered to have Artha and Kama as its two horns, signifying that we should be careful about them. They can injure. They are meant for protection only, not meant for indulgence. As Srimad Bhagavatam repeatedly points out, those who are pure devotees of the Supreme Lord, however, are not interested in any of these four, for they are obsessed with unmotivated and uninterrupted devotional service to the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. The Srimad Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita are meant for such pure Vaishnavas. However, the Ramayana, like the Bhagavad Gita, interesting that the Ramayana is equal to the Bhagavad Gita, can be understood to be a preliminary study of teachings found in the Srimad Bhagavatam. It therefore promotes Dharma and Moksha with surrender to the Lord, thus preparing the way to become a pure devotee of the Lord following the standard of Srimad Bhagavatam. Which means that if Dharma is lost, the horns are useless. Horns won't exist. Then even Kama, even sense gratification becomes completely distasteful. And Artha, economic development also is useless. Therefore, Dharma is very important. But Dharma is there to carry the load of Moksha. The bull is carrying the load of Moksha, which means liberation, which means that ultimately Dharma is maintained by maintaining the spiritual orders. So that spiritual advancement is made. And ultimately, for us, it's not moksha, it's prema pamarto mahan, to achieve love of Godhead, which the Srimad Bhagavatam gives us. So, I'll stop here. Any questions or comments?
Just kind of...
just one last point. And if Artha and Kama are not used just for protection, but if Dharma is lost, the bull becomes crazy, then starts attacking. It's like Dharma, Artha and Kama going nuts. Then it becomes violent and becomes a very dangerous bull. So the dangerous bull is heavily chastised. In some cases, it might even get killed out of other people trying to protect it. So in that way, everything becomes lost. Yes, Prabhu.
So I just kind of question. Now, there's like a devotee couple, whatever, and sex is only meant for procreation, and they engage in sex that is outside of procreation. Now, is that's considered a fall down? How? Because it's like in the brahmacārya ashram.
It is.
It may not be.
Technically, it is.
Yeah.
It's considered a fall down in the strict sense of the term, and but there is still room for rectification, much easier, and the disruption that it causes immediately in society is not as much. So there's relative. It's when it's willfully done, it's a fall down. It's like a brahmachari, maybe watching porn.
Yeah.
It's a fall down, but the disruption is less and it can be rectified. But if it's not rectified, it will lead to serious problems. And it's the same thing, that if the husband and wife keep engaging in sex without a desire for procreation, the bodily concept and viewing each other as objects of sense gratification is going to become more and more and more solidified, and which will lead to more and more conflict in the house and can eventually lead to divorce.
Just wondering with that in regard, just like when that situation happens in like a brahmacharya ashram, or when a devotee has some difficulty in terms of services, they become a little limited in terms of cooking or doing certain, maybe giving class and things like that. How does that work with like devotees that are in the grihastha ashram?
They have to self-discipline themselves, or they can seek guidance from senior grihasthas who can counsel them what they should do,
So they may
and
not-
how they can maybe perform some kind of penance, help them. Curtail like this, curtail like that, do this, do that. They have to be given counsel, and they need to seek counsel. It's like a brahmachari who goes on doing these kind of funny things in the background, doesn't seek counsel. It's a very dangerous situation. So same thing with the grihastha. When they don't seek counsel, I've seen examples of grihasthas who say, I've been trying for 1.5 years, and then now I'm decided to divorce. Oh, why didn't you guys approach counsel before that? I've thought about it very much, and I've really tried. That not seeking counsel is actually, one hasn't performed one's duty properly.
in Vedic culture, you'd have your grandparents or your parents to counsel and.
Yeah, and I mean, see, we are saying, the brahmachari doesn't maybe cook or doesn't give class or something, but that's specific to our circumstance, right? It's not like, it may not really apply in several other places. For instance, in a temple where you have 200 brahmacharis, the brahmachari hardly gives class, particular brahmachari may hardly give class anyways. So it may be a different way of sort of correcting that behavior.
Yeah, I was just mainly thinking that when you have small communities and then they're doing a specific service, and then they have a situation, and then it just I guess
There's a difference. When service is one thing, responsibility is another. Responsibilities are not to be given up. One has to rectify one's behavior, but go on. Srila Prabhupada made that point even with temple presidents and GBCs, that he wanted their behavior rectified, but he didn't want them to give up their responsibilities, even though they might have been engaging in activities that are not suitable for somebody of that position, and that they should be setting an example. But Srila Prabhupada wanted to emphasize that it's important that devotees and everyone recognizes the value of keeping responsibility. And truly, if you understand responsibility, then it means you live up to the character required of such a responsible person. Yes.
Prabhu is in this letter. It's really funny because Prabhupada says that material circumstances, specifically like problems in marriage life, are not an impediment for spiritual advancement. But we see that also Prabhupada said that in marriage life, one makes very little advancement or nil. So like how to understand that, because we know it's commonly understood, when your marriage life, you're not going to make much spiritual advancement.
Well, because the temptation is more. The temptation is more because you have a license for sense gratification, you can get diverted. And it's common that, you see, and one purpose why sadhus themselves go to grihasthas' houses is, and they don't wait for them to get invited, they sort of like go, is because the grihasthas, even though they're meant to invite, they may forget to invite, because they're just engrossed in their happy life of illusion.
What's his name?
So
The king, when Rama, they made a Sugriva.
Yeah, Sugriva forgot. Sugriva is an example. But then, you can see even in King Chitraketu's example, Narada Muni, Chitraketu didn't call for Narada. Call him. You'll find Narada Muni, he goes around. And so that's the duty, and Prabhupada would give example of Narada Muni specifically as Parivrajaka-acharya. He goes around uninvited to give spiritual instruction at the expense of being cursed by people like Daksha. So that's the thing. Daksha is a good example. He's a devotee, but he gets carried away. So this ability to get carried away is very easy. in the Grihastha ashram. And that's why Srila Prabhupada wanted our farm communities to be established, because things are more strict there. And the freedom is automatically curtailed. Because when you have freedom, it's hard. It's really hard. It's hard once you have that freedom. You have to really be really spiritually advanced. It's difficult. And so yeah, both are true. But the point is that if one is not advanced enough to give up sex desire, and to the extent at least that one is free from committing gross mistakes, then one has to accept the responsibility. And yes, when you accept the just like Priyavrata Maharaj, that's what he said, right? He said, if I get married, I'm going to get, and he did. He got carried away. But then he got saved. So the thing is that ultimately it's important to please Krishna, because if there is a risk of us displeasing him, again, as it said, it's better to remain. There's no doubt about it. It's better to remain unmarried. Prabhupada said, man is good, woman is good, combination is bad. So, it's better to remain unmarried. But if by remaining unmarried, there is a risk of displeasing the spiritual master and Krishna and losing shelter, it's not worth it. Then better to go and perform occupational duty. And in the course of that occupational duty, if you get carried away, but at least you have a proper sense of duty and you're doing it in that sense of duty, Krishna and Guru will save you. Vaishnavas will come and save you. If you have a proper sense of duty. And that's what devotees like Priyavrata Maharaj, Dhruva Maharaj also, he also got carried away by attachment to his brother who got killed. Anything else? Amen. Yes.
So on the same lines, in the purport it says, first of all it says, except for the grihastas or the householders, everyone is supposed to engage in the spiritual advancement of life. So it's almost saying that grihastas aren't supposed to engage in that.
I mean, it means solely.
And then, but at the end here it says...
Because there Prabhupada is using the word engagement as in terms of occupational duty. This is the word that Srila Prabhupada is using. The Grihastha has his occupational duty, which is material. The other ashrams, their engagement, which is meant for maintaining themselves, is spiritual in itself.
And at the end he says, by helping the other three sections of society cultivate spiritual values, the householder also makes advancement in spiritual life. So is it similar to like if a wife helps her husband, and she's not necessarily engaging fully spiritually?
See, when it's very simple. When dependents help those who are protecting them, just take this as a general rule in Vedic culture, in Krishna's Vedic culture, Krishna's material nature. When dependents help those who are protecting them, dependents help, assist, not hinder, assist. You have to help. You have to cooperate with those who are protecting you. They get mercy. And you get a couple of things. But mercy, one is you make spiritual advancement. You make advancement. Two, desires are fulfilled. This is the blessing. This is how it works. One gets blessings. Therefore, in Vedic culture, you would respect the parents, you would respect the guru, you would respect the cow. The cow is providing. You're not respected. You must respect it. You're dependent on the cow. The cow is protecting this. Therefore, we say cow protection, but the actual understanding is that the cow and the bull are protecting us. And we are reciprocating, just as one takes care of one's parents. But one doesn't think that it's by my mercy that the parents are surviving. No. It's not by our mercy that the cow and the bull are surviving. So, same thing with the brahmanas. The grihastha, even though he's maintaining the other society, other ashrams or the sannyasi, he doesn't, my sannyasi, he's my, my chela. I will give him $5 and he'll dance to my tunes. Then you've lost protection. Don't get spiritual instruction. So that's the principle of Vedic society in general. Mataji? Yes.
I just had a follow-up question from what Chandan Prabhu was asking. So, the dharma of the wife is to be submissive and chastity. So, in her attempt to try and be submissive to her husband, if he tries to implement her into a fall down, how does the wife navigate that?
It's a tough one. It's a tough one to navigate. One tries to counsel the husband. If the husband doesn't listen, then sometimes under the guidance of some senior grahasthas, again, it's done under the guidance, there may be some temporary separation, just to put some sense in the husband's head. The wife may go off to her parents' house for some time, spend some time. These things are there in Vedic culture also. So just to put some sense in his head. And then if he chooses that opportunity to reform himself, then to put back together. But if he doesn't reform himself, then unfortunately it's her fate. She's lost protection. It's not a very good place to be. But still, one can still be Krishna conscious. Because one can still take shelter, and such people need to be protected. And therefore, it was also considered as a pious thing that they had these widow ashrams and things like that in Vrindavan. Unfortunately, those people later, instead of being protected, they were being exploited by the debauchee Babajis. But that was not exactly supposed to be the system, because there are sometimes unfortunate women whose fate is so bad that they've lost their protection. They don't have protection of their parents, maybe parents are dead, and husband also is a useless fellow. So they become widows. In our society, they're protected by the brahmacarini ashram, and we are supposed to implement this. Therefore, it's there. But this is there. I'm just making the point that in Vedic culture, this is there. But there was one system where the reformation is tried by separation, little bit, to try to put some sense. But if he's already so lost, then what can be done? Yeah. Material life is not good, therefore the goal is to go back home, back to Godhead. It's just, who's saying that this cannot happen to us? Right? Who's saying? If we're born again, anything can happen. It can happen in this lifetime also. So, ultimately taking shelter of Krishna's lotus feet is the only solution to all problems. Okay, Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.